So good morning. It's great to have you with us. Welcome to Silk Life Online. Uh, we are picking up with our series on Exodus. We're moving through this book steadily over the coming months. We've been looking at it since the beginning of October now. And the journey of the Hebrews it's really been staggering so far. Just so many dramatic events, starting with um, the Pharaoh's attempt to wipe out all Hebrew boys, to Moses' experience of the burning bush, then the miraculous staff, the plagues in Egypt, pillars of smoke and fire, and then protection from the Egyptian army, and then the parting of the Red Sea, and miraculous provision of bread from heaven and water from a rock, and it's just, whew, it's one thing after another. And now we come to halfway through Exodus 17, where we get the next in a long line of dramatic events. I'll read it to you. So we're picking up from verse 8 in chapter 17. It says, Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Just when they think they're out of the woods, eh? The Egyptians are behind them. They have food and drink in their bellies. The future is ahead of them. The future is bright. And then they're ambushed by the Amalekites, who were descendants of Esau and actually Israel's relatives. And while there's some relational tension in their past, as there is with all good families, they should have respected them as family. The Amalekites were nomadic people, but Rephidim was miles away from Amalekite territory. This attack comes out of the blue. And Moses says to Joshua, Choose some men and go out and fight with Amalek. And tomorrow I'll stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. Choose some men. Easier said than done, right? When you consider what he had to choose from. This was a generation who had grown up in slavery. How many were malnourished or gnarled from injury from manual labor, or bearing scars from Egyptian beatings? How many had ever had a fight before, even just a fist fight? We don't know. But they were not trained military men. They did not have a whole bunch of serious weaponry. These were not traveling ninjas in disguise. Joshua had one day to prep, because this, the passage tells us, this is happening tomorrow. Clearly the Amalekites had seen their moment. The Israelites were traveling with lots of Egyptian wealth. You remember before they left Egypt, they went and they kind of knocked on their neighbors and gathered up wealth for their journey. But they had no defenses. This was the time to strike for a rich bounty. It was perhaps too tempting to ignore. The very nature of an ambush is you don't see it coming. It blindsides you from a direction you didn't predict. For many, this new strain of COVID, tier 4 restrictions, it's come as an ambush. It feels like an ambush in a season where many were already feeling deflated. Energy reserves were low. In some sense, the first lockdown in March, it was quite novel. There's a bit of a wartime spirit in it together. And then nearly a year on, where there's a fatigue and a lowness of mood. And the ambush feels like it could be fatal. And actually, there's plenty of other stuff going on in our lives. House moves, job situations, family life, parenting challenges, health issues that are nothing to do with COVID. There's a new term that starts tomorrow for teachers, support staff and pupils, and who knows what that's going to look like. That in itself is a tussle, is a battleground, and it all adds up to one thing. Tomorrow is going to be a hard slog fight. I find it really intriguing that the Amalekites chose to pick a fight with the Hebrews. Surely they'd heard about what happened in Egypt. Surely they'd heard about the plague. Surely they'd heard how the Egyptian army was just washed away. Or did they think Yahweh might not notice? Yahweh's done his work and now he's on vacation. Folks, I want to tell you, God is not oblivious to your situation. He has not forgotten you. His nature has not changed. He is not reluctant to engage on your behalf, and he is not on vacation. God still fights for his people today. And battles are still won today when the children of God take their stand in faith. In this case, Joshua and the men go into battle, but Moses stood on the hill with the staff of God in his hand. It's this stick again, folks. It keeps on cropping up. The staff, you remember, it's first mentioned in chapter 4 of Exodus, when God appears to Moses in the burning bush. And Moses is racked with uncertainty, and he says, no one's ever going to believe that God appeared to me. So God says to him, what's in your hand? And Moses answers, it's a staff, it's a stick, it's for steering sheep. God appoints that staff should be an instrument of deliverance for the people of God. And you'll remember Aaron gets one as well. And when Aaron and Moses appear before Pharaoh, they use the staff to overcome Pharaoh's sorcerers. And they use the staff to turn the Nile blood red. And the staff is used several times on God's command to initiate plagues in Egypt. And then during the Exodus themselves, as they're leaving Egypt, Moses stretches out his hand with the staff to part the Red Sea. And while in the wilderness, after leaving Egypt, Moses follows God's command to strike a rock with a rod to create a spring for the Israelites to drink from. Water pours out from the rock in the presence of all of Israel. And now Moses uses the staff in the battle at Rephidim. You notice Moses doesn't get a special instruction from God to do this. He just does. You ever wondered why? I think God had told him right back in the beginning in Exodus 4 to take this staff and you'll do amazing signs with it. And Moses could not have forgotten everything that he's already seen and learned, and what a significant part this wooden staff has played in all that God has done. And so he stands there with it lifted aloft, expectant that God will see their need, hear their prayers, and fight on their behalf. When he holds his arms up, the Israelites prevail in battle. The battle goes their way. But when he gets tired and his arms drop, then the Amalekites seem to gain the upper hand. So the rod is up, they're winning, the rod drops, they start to lose. Now, if I'm the people, I'm starting to clock onto this. And so when the staff goes up, I'm like fighting full of fury. And then when the staff goes down, I'm running for the hills. So Aaron and Hur help him to keep the staff raised until victory is achieved. You see, the staff is a rallying point for the people, and a rallying point through which God will make his victory visible. It's a curious episode for us, looking back. This episode of the mighty staff, the mighty stick, hangs as a bit of an enigma in Israel's history. But actually, generations later, Jesus draws on this Jewish history to tell people about himself. In John 12, he says, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. In the context of this Exodus narrative, this statement makes sense, because just as the staff was raised up, so Jesus was raised up on the cross. Just as the men rally to the staff raised up as a banner over them, we rally to the banner of Jesus. He is the banner over us. Just as Moses and the Israelites had come to recognize the staff as the means by which God intervened in their lives, so we recognize the raised cross as the means by which we find access to God and his deliverance. The Messiah is the true and better banner who rallies people from every nation to God's salvation victory. Jesus is the rallying point for the ultimate victory of God. The death and resurrection of Jesus are the basis upon which we're to make requests to God. God demonstrates to the watching world that Jesus, the raised staff, is the means of salvation. Now, this battle's taking place in Rephidim, and Rephidim was also the place where God provided water for the people by pouring it out from the rock. Phil taught us excellently about that last week. The rock gushed with water to satisfy Israel's need. And when Moses grew tired and reached the end of himself, Moses sat on the rock at Rephidim while Aaron and Hur held up his arms. Friends, Jesus invites us to rest in him and let him turn our stumbling prayers into mighty intercession. Remember Romans 8, he helps us in our weakness. The symbolism of these events is profound for Christians today. When faced by an ambush of circumstances, we lift up Jesus as the author and perfecter of our faith. He is the means by which we are cleansed and made whole. He is the source of our confidence that God will sustain us through battles and fight for his own. When we reach the end of our resources, we can stand or even sit on Christ, our rock, Christ the rock, the foundation of our lives, the resource of comfort and sustenance. Just as water from the rock soothed the chronic thirst of the Israelites in Exodus, so streams of living water flowing from Christ, our rock, will soothe our parched throats, ease our physical and spiritual longing, provide us with our ultimate rest. Of course, there is a third image here. The image of Aaron and Hur, faithfully gripping the arms of Moses, lifting them up like their lives depend on it, like the lives of their kin depend upon it. The victory against the Amalekites was won. But who won it? Was it Joshua and his makeshift army? Certainly they swung their staffs and they threw their punches. But when Moses' arms dropped, they were pushed back and overrun. So did Moses win the battle? But when Moses got tired, his arms dropped and he needed to sit down. And Aaron and Hur held up his arms. So did Aaron and Hur win the battle? Or was it all about the staff, this shepherd's stick? Or the promise of supernatural power through the stick? Did God win the battle? Certainly God did win the battle. But just as certainly, God used the efforts of Joshua, the army, Moses, Aaron, and Hur to bring his deliverance. You see, in every battle, God invites us to partner with him to see breakthrough. In every tussle, God invites us to partner with each other to see the battle through to completion. Some of you may feel like you're clinging on for dear life today. This season has taken its toll. And I don't know how many more times I can lift my arms. There's a battle going on. My arms have been up. I've been trusting and trusting and trusting, but I can't stand anymore. Somebody help me. Church is designed by God to be the place where we yell out, I can't keep them up. Designed to be the place where those who care about you and for you come by your side, gather a stone and tell you to sit, pray for you, encourage you, lift your arms so you do not give up. Church in tier 4 isn't, with the last one out, please turn out the lights. It's not a sinking ship where even the rats are jumping overboard. Church in tier 4 means we lift each other's hands. We all need help. It's part of being human. We need help for our souls in the midst of hardship. Church in tier 4 means we all need help and we are all helpers. We all need help and we are all helpers. We're meant to walk side by side, an interdependent body of weak people. We didn't show up at online church this morning to show off. We showed up to help and be helped. It's humbling, but it's beautiful. I can't keep these arms up by myself. When we gather as church, we want to worship God and be taught from the Bible, but we must also find each other. In truth, if I arrive late, leave early, if I listen but never engage, if I duck out of midweek groups and miss the prayer meetings, maybe I'm robbing myself of God's intended purpose for the church to help and be helped. True, structured meetings are not the only way of connecting with people, but they are a way of connecting with people. You may have other ways. I'd encourage you this afternoon to take some time to consider, where am I plugging in to invest in other people in the church and allow them to invest in me, to help and be helped? If the answer is uncomfortable or simply unclear, do drop me a message and we can talk it through more. But during this Tier 4 season of Scattered Church, we must use every tool available to us. Social distance should not mean total isolation for anyone. We've got too many tools at our fingertips for that to happen. And as the great philosopher Lilo and Stitch once said, family means no one left behind. I've been super blessed to see great examples in recent days of people holding each other's arms up. Words of encouragement in group chats and sharing belongings with each other, and earnest prayers for healing and breakthrough, delivery of meals to sick families, lifts to medical appointments, delivery of prescriptions. Tier 4 will urge us to batten down the hatches, look after me and mine, keep a boundary, keep my distance. But we must consciously fight the current to discard the blessing of belonging to a church family where we know and can be known, where we show up when a brother needs someone to hold their arms, and where someone pulls up a chair when we're about to flag. Just to underline my point, just flick over into Exodus 18 with me, because Jethro comes to visit Moses. Remember Jethro? He's Moses' father-in-law. He's the priest in Midian. And Moses has been on this incredible journey since they last saw each other. But he finds Moses now struggling with this incredible superhuman workload. It's not often said when we talk about Moses, but have you noticed that Moses has only succeeded so far by relying on people around him? Think back, even surviving infancy, he was reliant on his mum and his sister and some bold midwives to help him survive. Jethro gave him a home when he was a broken guy having run away from Egypt. His wife and father-in-law released him to go back to Egypt after the burning bush encounter, the call of God. Aaron went with him. There's lots you can say about the Israelites, but actually without the leaders of the tribes and the clans, Moses would never have mobilized the people to leave Egypt following the final plague. We see Joshua who led the army into battle against the Amalekites, Hur who held up one arm while Aaron held the other. Truth is, no one human leader should or could obscure the glory of God and his salvation work. A cult of one iconic figure is really, it's a bottleneck to God's purposes and plans for the wider body of believers. Don't take my word for it. Charles Spurgeon said this: I tremble for a church whose continuance depends upon the talent and cleverness of one man. May none of us fall into a mean, poverty-stricken dependence on man. Given a host who are steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, then the glory of God's grace will be clearly manifested. Jethro gives Moses one piece of advice, and it's interesting to see what it is. Given everything that's happened, what's the one piece of advice that Jethro is going to give Moses? He actually starts with a rebuke. He says, what you are doing is not good. I can picture Moses actually. Excuse me, Jethro, which one of us just led these people out of slavery and into freedom? Which one of us had the foresight to gather up a load of treasure from Egypt? Which one of us parted the waters and crushed the whole Egyptian army? Which one of us just saw off the Amalekites? It would have been real easy for Moses to turn his nose up at Jethro, but actually such arrogance would have been misplaced because in fact, Moses did none of those things. God did those things. So Jethro's advice is this: you're going to wear yourself out, for the thing is too heavy for just you. You are not able to do this alone. Represent the people before God, warn them about the statutes and the law, show them the way to walk, but then look for able people who fear God, who are trustworthy, and place them as leaders of big groups, medium groups, and small groups. Moses has got his job: pray, teach, and provide direction. He then needs a team of really great people to lean in and lead in different areas of community life. Team leadership at every level of the community. Jethro says there are 3 benefits, 3 promises that go with this. He says, if you do this, 1, God will direct you. 2, you will be able to endure. And 3, the people will go to their place in peace. Fascinating. God will be with you, you won't burn out, and the people will be at peace and feel safe. It's remarkable that collaborative leadership isn't some business jargon model. It's right here in the Old Testament and the Bible. Secure, healthy team leadership is a conduit, a vessel, a pathway for God's direction, for endurance, and peaceful stability for the people. People feel safe with a great team around them. You know, God has got such purpose in drawing us together into community. The church isn't just a club or a funny old idea. That God intends this church to experience his direction, to be able to endure and to live in peace and security with great leadership. Our salvation is not a personal, individual experience. It is best lived out in the context of community and team, where we sharpen each other, encourage each other, hold each other up when the battle is on. Do you know, whatever your gift is, whatever your gift mix is, it's best worked out in the context of community. If you're a really brilliant tea maker, you make the best cup of tea there is. You will never find true fulfillment until you're making tea for other people. If you're a great musician, part of the magic, part of the wonder of being a musician is being able to engage other people in your music. We're intended to live in community. We're intended to hold each other's arms up. Do you know what I'm going to ask you? I'm going to, bit unorthodox, just grab your phone now. This is the one time you will hear me encourage you to send a text during my preach. Just grab your phone. I just want you to ping a message to some people that you know. Just a real simple message that says, do you know, I'm so glad we're on the same team. I've got your back. I'm looking forward to catching up. Let's talk soon. Just do that now. I'm going to do a couple in front of you to know that I'm just not talking rubbish. This is just the beginning of that process of getting to know where people are up to, getting to know that what their life looks like, getting to know what they need. Just ping a couple off. Not that that's the end of the job, but actually somewhere along the line that then turns into a bigger conversation. This is fun, isn't it? Hey? Maybe some more of those later, but you've seen me do it. It's so good to be in each other's lives and be able to hold each other's arms up and encourage each other to sit when we reach the brink. But let's pray now. Jesus, thank you that when the pressure is on, we can make a stand in faith and trust in your provision. That through you we trust in the promises of God. Help us to draw deep from streams of living water, the richness of your presence that sustains us and enables us to rest when all around is chaos. And oh God, I just ask, would you strengthen the bonds in our community? Enable us to find each other and share life together and have all things in common. Enable us to help and be helped, to hold each other's arms up, to wipe away the veneer of pretense or false spirituality that prevents us from truly knowing each other. God, I ask that you plant seeds of true friendship among us. Sow fruitfulness across our community that we share in each other's journeys and adventures. Oh God, would you cause us to remain in the vine and bear fruit as we draw on your nourishing presence. Holy Spirit, just in this moment we wait for you. Just give you space to come and be at work in our spirit. We just ask you to be speaking to our hearts and our minds, and stirring our spirits. Thank you, Jesus. Well, so thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you've just logged in for the message on Facebook, we do hope that you'll join us again in future weeks. Next week, we're moving into Mount Sinai, and we're going to experience something of the awe and wonder of the holiness of God. I'm looking forward to it already, and see you then.